The galaxy had moved past war. At least, that's what the Council claimed. After 10,000 years of slow evolution and treaties written in a dozen languages, the great civilizations of the stars no longer killed for territory or pride. Disputes were solved in simulations, controlled and curated, where honor remained intact and casualties were hypothetical. Young cadets trained with grace, theories, and precision. Victory was a matter of elegance, not brutality. Then humanity arrived. Discovered on the outer fringe of known space, Earth was a primitive world, small, aggressive, and barely holding itself together. Its people had only just achieved interstellar travel, yet within a few years, they'd cracked encryption, reverse-engineered alien tech, and started pushing into combat academies where their presence was tolerated. The Council couldn't deny their potential. Humans were fast learners. Too fast. Their methods were erratic, unpredictable, and worst of all, effective. To keep things contained, they offered a position to one of Earth's most decorated officers. A role with no field duty, no weapons, just words. Commander Elias Vork. The title was ceremonial, Kill Count Instructor. He would teach history, tactics, maybe scare some cadets into respecting the horrors of war. No real danger. No threat. A symbolic gesture to make humanity feel included without giving them real power. When Vork arrived, he didn't bring the smooth skin and refined manners of the other instructors. His face was scored with old wounds, his eyes unreadable. He wore no ceremonial robe, only the matte black uniform of Earth's disbanded Blackguard Division. A force that, until now, was nothing more than whispered rumor to the Council. His first day at the Galactic Military Academy sent a ripple through the ranks. Species who had never seen blood in their lifetimes now stood face to face with a man who had bathed in it. He didn't introduce himself with pomp or flair. No translations, no acknowledgments of honor. He looked across a room of bright-eyed alien cadets and said one thing. "You don't understand war." Some chuckled. Others looked confused. Vork stared back without blinking. "You've simulated conflict. You've studied outcomes. But you've never held a comrade's intestines in your hands and tried to stuff them back inside while bullets tore through your position. You've never buried your dead with your own bare hands because the field medic was already dead. You've never watched an enemy scream as fire melted their helmet to their skull." A silence spread. Jaws clenched. Eyes narrowed. "This class isn't about winning simulations," he said. "It's about surviving the real thing." From that moment, the tone changed. The Council watched from a distance, uneasy. He wasn't breaking any rules. Not technically. But something about the way the cadets leaned forward, listening, absorbing, unnerved them. It wasn't just fascination. It was hunger. They were beginning to understand the truth behind the myth. And the truth was simple. Humanity didn't come to play war. They came because it was the only thing they'd ever truly mastered. The cadets came to Vork's next lecture expecting tactics, charts, equations, something familiar. Instead, he started with a question. "What's the highest kill count in your species' history?" A few raised their appendages, awkwardly listing simulation records or ceremonial battles from centuries ago. Vork didn't react. He simply activated a projector. The lights dimmed. What followed wasn't a chart. It was footage. Helmet cams. Dirt. Blood. Screams. Real war. Human soldiers pinned in trenches, dragging wounded comrades through fire. Explosions shaking the screen. A final standoff, 4 soldiers holding a hill against hundreds. No music. No glory. Just survival. When the screen went dark, no one spoke. Vork broke the silence. That was Operation Pale Sky. 320 confirmed kills by one squad. None of them survived. The cadets looked disturbed. Some looked angry. One cadet asked, with a trembling voice, why humans would even record such things. "Because we learn from death," Vork answered. "And because numbers matter when your enemy doesn't respect rules." He began writing kill counts on the board. Historical campaigns. Cities lost. Worlds burned. Every figure had a name attached, not just a number. His own was there too. High. Far too high. "That's what I'm here to teach," he said. "Not pride in death. Responsibility for it." A crystalline cadet objected. "Our wars are ceremonial. What you show is savagery." Vork looked at him without blinking. "Ceremony is for those who can afford to lose. We never had that luxury. You think peace is your nature. It's not. It's a choice you were allowed to make. We had to fight for the right to make that choice." That hit harder than any footage. Because deep down, they knew it was true. Their systems, their peace, all built on civilizations that won long before simulation was an option. Humanity was just late to the table. By the third session, the council began monitoring his lectures directly. They cited emotional distress among students. Vork ignored the warnings. He began assigning readings from Earth's military doctrine. Books that didn't glorify war, but dissected it like surgery. The cadets devoured them. Not because they were gruesome, but because they were real. Soon, they started asking questions differently. Less about winning, more about surviving. Less about glory, more about cost. Vork answered all of them with brutal honesty. He never glamorized killing. He just refused to lie about what it required. The council debated removing him. But that would confirm their fear that humanity wasn't corrupting the academy. It was exposing its weakness. They had hoped a human would teach history. Instead, he was teaching them the truth. War was never elegant. It was only ever effective. And humans? They didn't invent war. They just never stopped bleeding long enough to forget what it was. The annual combat simulation was the Academy's pride. A massive, non-lethal battlefield designed to test strategy, teamwork, and control under pressure. Cadets from every species participated, and victory was a mark of honor. It was never chaotic. Never dangerous. Just a contest of minds. Vork asked to enter. The request raised eyebrows. Instructors didn't participate. He insisted. Not as an observer, but as a field commander. The council approved it reluctantly, thinking it would finally humble the humans. They assigned him a team of 6 volunteer human cadets, each with minimal experience compared to the others. The other teams laughed. Even the bookmakers didn't bother setting odds. The simulation began. Within minutes, something was wrong. Cadets reported visual glitches, enemies appearing where they shouldn't. Communications went dead. Terrain advantages were nullified. Vork's team didn't follow standard deployment patterns. They vanished from radar, slipped through detection fields, left decoys behind. They weren't playing the game. They were hunting. One by one, opposing teams were eliminated. Not deactivated in ceremonial fashion, but ambushed, isolated, and overwhelmed. A squad of avian tacticians found themselves encircled by smoke grenades. When it cleared, their command post was gone. Sabotaged. A machine specialist from the Carnith faction was lured into a tunnel by distress signals only to find a false trail and a stun mine. It wasn't chaos. It was precision with a human edge, built on unpredictability and ruthlessness. Midway through, a high-ranking cadet tried to issue a formal surrender, believing their team was compromised. Vork intercepted the message. "Your surrender is noted," he said calmly. "Now run." What followed was a rout. The council watched the data stream in disbelief. Vork's squad hadn't just won, they had dismantled the simulation itself. Every tactic, every protocol, undone by instinct honed through generations of real warfare. When the exercise ended, the other cadets weren't angry. They were silent. The alien instructors argued the results were flawed. That the humans had broken the spirit of the simulation. Vork responded with numbers. Not casualties, not damage reports. Efficiency ratings. His team had completed the objective using half the resources, with near-zero exposure. One official accused him of teaching brutality. He corrected them. "No. I'm teaching survival. You confuse discomfort with immorality. That's how people die." After the simulation, applications to join human-led study groups tripled. Non-human cadets began adjusting their own tactics, incorporating unpredictable variables, learning how to fight without symmetry. The council was furious. They summoned Vork to explain himself. He offered no apology. "You wanted to understand humanity," he said. "This is what we are. We don't fight clean. We fight to win. Because on Earth, the enemy doesn't wait for your strategy to mature." That line stuck. The Council had brought in a curiosity. They had expected a relic. Instead, they'd unleashed a lesson none of them were prepared for. In one simulation, the galaxy learned a bitter truth. Humans didn't simulate war. They survived it. Vork was reassigned within the week. The Council called it a rotation, but everyone knew the truth. He had become a problem. Not through misconduct, but by being too effective. His presence was reshaping the very structure of the Academy. What began as discomfort among the elders had evolved into something else, fear. But removing him didn't erase the impact. Cadets who once memorized clean, sanitized strategies now questioned everything. They read human material in private. Books once banned from the curriculum passed hand to hand. The phrase kill count no longer sounded grotesque. It sounded honest. Every cadet who had trained under Vork began tracking their own simulations differently, not for glory, but to understand the consequences of every decision. Departments quietly overhauled their training programs. Simulations gained new layers, ambush scenarios, moral stressors, resource deprivation. Alien instructors started consulting human veterans off-record. The Council's vision of sterile, orderly warfare was cracking under the weight of reality. And it didn't stop at the Academy. Fleet admirals began requesting Earth advisors for conflict zones. Not because they endorsed human methods, but because they feared what would happen without them. Pirates, rogue factions, insurgents, groups that didn't follow ceremonial rules were becoming harder to handle. And the only species that knew how to deal with such threats already had centuries of practice. Rumors spread of planetary defense forces hiring former blackguard operatives as consultants. Not publicly, never officially, but often enough that even the Council couldn't ignore it. Vork, meanwhile, sent one message to the Academy after his departure. It was short. A recorded lecture, addressed to no one and everyone. "You feared our brutality. That's fair. But what you saw wasn't bloodlust. It was adaptation. You evolved past war because you had the time and stability to do so. We didn't. Our world burned too long, and we didn't get the luxury of forgetting. We don't celebrate violence. We just refuse to lie about what it takes to win." He paused, eyes cold. "Understand this. We aren't proud of our kill counts. But we honor them. Because every number has a name. Every name had a purpose. And if you're going to lead armies, then you'd better know the weight of what you're commanding." The message ended. It was never officially archived. But everyone who heard it remembered it. Some cadets left the program entirely. War, once a game to them, now looked like a monster they weren't ready to face. Others stayed, hardened, focused. Not because they wanted to be killers, but because they finally understood what war really demanded. The Council failed to contain the influence. They had opened the door to a species that never forgot how to bleed. And now, the galaxy knew what true combat looked like. Humanity hadn't come to participate. They'd come to prepare the others for the wars they didn't know were coming. And the first lesson had already begun.